This podcast is brought to you by Cash App, the easy way to send, spend, save, and invest with friends. Does everyone in your friends group have a cash tag? That's money. And because Cash App connects you effortlessly with your friends and your finances, I would like to take this moment to shout out all the friends who are on Cash App. Shout out to the friend whose cash tag is learning to bake, and to the one who helped you take out your AC out of your window. A big shout out to the friend who owes you $38, and a shout out to the friend who will only pay you back in Bitcoin, and the one who always suggests theme restaurants. One last shout out from me. Shout out to the old friend who instilled a fear of manta rays in you that you can't shake.
And the new one who recently started working in real estate and now says location, location, location all the time. Shout out to the friend who withholds repayment until you can finally agree that Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time, and the one who can't dance. Shout out to the friend who sends GIF reactions entirely too much for everyone's taste.
That's me.
And to the one who thinks you're related. And to the friend who drew their cat on their custom cash card. Shout out to you, sir.
Cash App is the easy way for you and all your friends to enjoy sending, spending, saving, investing, splitting, tipping, donating, gifting, or just pressing buttons to look busy, all with the #1 finance app in the App Store. That's money, that's Cash App. Download Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today to create your own cash tag. Welcome to the Old Man of the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, presented by Cash App and brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 132. Joakim Noah. Tommy, Joakim actually stopped by the studio. This was our first in-person interview in the new studio a couple weeks ago. Just a fascinating guy. Incredible story. His background, his career, the ups, the downs. I think not unexpectedly. He was open, he was candid, really thoughtful.
Yeah, I was going to say, not only did he stop by the studio, we spent basically the whole day with him. Great hang, and you could tell that in the pod. I mean, he's so comfortable in his own skin, talking basketball, talking about all the other cool things he has going on in his life. He's a fascinating guy with an amazing background that we get into in pretty good detail.
One disclaimer real quick. Again, first in-person interview. For the first couple minutes of Joakim's interview and responses, just a couple minutes, he wasn't talking directly in the mic, so it's going in and out a little bit. Apologize for that. We got him squared away. The other hour and 45 minutes is good to go.
You got a lot of mic. You got a lot of content of him talking to the mic in the right way.
I before we get to Joakim, I do want to mention, because we have a new show, a new weekly show. It's only available on the Amazon Music app. It is for subscribers of Amazon Music, but it's a weekly show. It's called The Old Man and the Three Things. It's a blatant ripoff of Zach Lowe's. Shout out Zach. Zach Lowe's 10 Things that he releases every day during the NBA season. Tommy and I are talking about 3 NBA-related topics in depth. We just released our first episode on Tuesday of this week. Going forward, all these episodes will be out every Monday during the NBA season, and we're going to riff on 3 things every week. This week, we covered the Cavs-Celtics matchup. We covered the lack of tanking from teams like the Jazz, Spurs, and Thunder, and we covered Giannis. So if you want to listen to the extra exclusive weekly episode called The Old Man of the Three Things, it's very easy. In the show description, just tap the button. It'll take you right to the link. Sign up for Amazon Music and get our exclusive weekly show, The Old Man and the Three Things. Tommy, you know this. I took my 2 sons, Knox and Kai, to watch the Mavs-Nets game last week on Thursday. It was also an opportunity for my boys to meet Luka, because when I played for the Mavs, this was during a time when fans, family, whatever, there's no family room. They couldn't come in. We were very, sectioned off from the rest of the world. The teams were. So it was our first time meeting him. Luka was fantastic. Signed Knox's jersey.
By the way.
Yeah.
All-time family. That's your Christmas card this year.
Yeah, it's got to be. Knox looking up at Luka. It was one of the most magical moments as a father for me. I mean, just the awe and wonder in his eyes.
And Kai not caring.
Kai's a boss, by the way. Luka reached out his hand, and Kai was just like,
yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Actually, I saw in the comments, because the Mavs posted it. I think NBA posted it too. I know I reposted it. But some of the comments were like, you can tell the second kid is going to be super competitive. Like, doesn't give a fuck.
He's like, I already talked about beating Luka.
It was wild, though. It was a wild game. Went into overtime. Luka had a 40-point triple-double. I mean, it couldn't have been a more magical night for Knox. Kai, of course, left at halftime because he has the attention span of a normal 6-year-old. But Knox stayed for the whole game with me. I was just in awe of Luka. And we have discussed this already. Luka, according to DraftKings Sportsbook, has the highest odds, the best odds of winning MVP. Right now, he's at plus 330. And a lot of this MVP discussion as it is shaped throughout the year will be dictated, Tommy, by who is winning games. And I think the Mavs are better than they were last year. I don't know that they end up as a top 3 seed, but certainly if Luka keeps playing this way, he's got to be in the discussion for MVP.
For sure. And I also think there's an optics part of this conversation of when Luka goes for 40, 13, and 11 against the Nets on TNT, that's going to help his cause and things like this. Those crazy passes, the 2 behind the back passes in overtime, the one where he wasn't looking over his head in the third quarter. But yes, he is going to be, if not the front runner, he's going to be in the conversation for sure.
The other guy, Giannis, his odds have shifted significantly over the last week. His odds went from plus 650 to plus 350. And even for Defensive Player of the Year, his odds have shifted plus 550 to plus 450. Giannis is anchoring the number 1 defense in the league. They're undefeated. His counting numbers are insane right now. And look, maybe after 20 games, we'll have a clearer picture of this. But you have to say Giannis right now is the MVP through 5-6 games.
For sure, he's the MVP, and they are the front runner to win the championship, I think.
Absolutely. So Giannis doubled up in 2019, 2020. Defensive Player of the Year and MVP. He's got a chance to do it again. Again, you can get all these odds on DraftKings Sportsbook. Plenty of stuff. Player futures like MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. We're doing same game parlays on our own 3 social channels every week. We've had a lot of fun picking those same game parlays. They're great. You get all this stuff at DraftKings Sportsbook. See show notes for details. All right, Tommy, let's get to our awesome conversation with Bulls legend, Joakim Noah. All right, let's welcome in Joakim Noah. Very special guest. First time we've got someone at 342 HQ. Couldn't think of a better person to do it.
Thanks for having me, man.
Of course, man. It's interesting because we've known for a couple weeks now that we were going to do this with you, but honestly, man, like I've spent way too much time thinking about you this week because Tommy and I had to go to Cleveland on Monday, and as soon as we landed, we just talked about your press conference for the next hour.
It's crazy. I mean, I was walking in the street a couple of days ago, and some guy came up to me like, "Hey, man." He's like, "Man, I'm from Cleveland, man." I'm like, "Geez, people are still talking about this. What happened 10 years ago?
12 years ago.
12 years ago. And there's still, it's what I got remembered for. It's talking shit about Cleveland."
I mean, my thing with the press conference, this is very early days of Twitter. And it made its rounds, but it didn't have the full, people still write articles about that press conference. So it has this lingering viral effect. I wish that moment was in 2019 or 2022, where NBA Twitter sort of just would have gotten a hold of that and just crushed it.
I mean, it's all right, man. I think I'm happy where it is. I don't go back to Cleveland. The reality is we got smoked in game 1. I was pissed. It came from the heart, I promise, though. The best part about it is we had a game 2 the next day. So you can imagine
the backlash
of going into game 2 after talking shit about the whole city. I loved it, though. It was one of my favorite games.
You had a long career. We actually both officially retired the same year in 2021. Before we get to your career, I think it's important to sort of set the table here with your background, because to me, you have one of the most fascinating backgrounds of any guest, Tommy, that we've had on the show, going back generations, basically. So could you just kind of explain? I mean, I'm sure most viewers know about your dad and him being a professional tennis player, but just kind of explain your background?
I come from a lot of different places. My mother's a Swedish lady coming from a farm town. My father was a tennis player who came, a mixed kid coming from France and West Africa and Cameroon. And I was born in New York City. Went to really good schools here. I lived in Paris for 10 years. So I grew up a privileged kid, but I always loved basketball. So just, coming to New York City and playing basketball in New York City, just made me who I am. I think that I played basketball a certain way. And I think that, my heritage and the way that I was raised definitely made me who I am. And I mean, I think also just having a lot of perspective just because I was traveling. So I think that, just a lot of different cultures, appreciating different cultures, accepting different cultures, and not being able to kind of be put in a group of like, oh, he's from here or he's that. No, everybody has a story. Everybody has their journey. And I appreciate difference because I come from a lot of different places.
So you were playing at the United Nations. You were going to and playing basketball at the United Nations school till your sophomore year?
Till my sophomore year.
And then you were kicked out.
I got kicked out. I had a joint in my pocket. It's actually a small bong.
Was this a first strike? Was this a fifth strike?
I mean, I was always a rebel child, just always going up against authority. When it happened, sometimes you go through tough things and you need to go through that. And I think it humbled me and it made me, I also grew a lot that year. In one summer, I went from 6'2" to 6'10". So I had guard skills. I was playing point guard at the United Nations school. And I'm not going to say the United Nations school was great in a lot of ways because there was kids from everywhere. You would sit at a lunch table and there was a kid from Pakistan and a Brazilian kid and, a kid from Israel. Everybody was just from everywhere. So it was a great melting pot. And I think that New York represents that a lot. But then when I got kicked out, I went to an American school. I went to Poly Prep and in Brooklyn. And that's when I started taking, basketball seriously. And I was like, okay, there's something here that, I love this game, but I'm going to take this to another level. And I think that pain of getting kicked out and embarrassing my family, I think that it made me even stronger.
Shout out Poly Prep, by the way.
Shout out
Poly Prep.
Big shout out, Coach McNally, first time, boxing one, X's and O's. I was just used to playing ball, just running up and down the court. And so it was the first time that, I had to learn to play and, just learn that, basketball was just more than just, getting buckets and getting rebounds. You just had to learn the game and study the game and study your opponents. And that's what Poly Prep gave me, private school, the sports over there is something that you really feel it. The culture over there is athletic for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to get the number wrong, but I think it's like a 29-acre campus in Dyker Heights, Brooklyn, which most kids in New York City don't get to have that sort of experience where there's a Friday night football game at like a on-campus stadium. It's a really unique thing. I had a question about your sort of initial love of basketball. You're a son of a tennis legend, and what sort of drew you to the game? What was that initial juice that made you fall in love with it?
I was born in New York City. My dad, his agent, he was with ProServe, and they had Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing, and so those guys were a little bit younger than my dad, but same generation. So I remember, just being around that kind of energy and those basketball players, and I was immediately drawn to that. So I always had hoop dreams as a kid. Dad was a tennis player. I always stayed away from that just because of the comparisons, and It was just an energy that I shied away from right away. So I wanted to do my own thing. And I think that now I can look back at it, and especially as a kid, I didn't want to be in my dad's shadow. And my dad is very charismatic and somebody who people really appreciated being around him. And, he's a leader, but he was somebody also who played a individual sport. And, I was the kid in the back who was looking for his space. So I think that basketball kind of gave me that, just like an escape from, his fame and that energy. And I just knew right away that a lot of my fight came from having to prove that I wasn't going to be like some silver spoon kid who was just going to live under my dad's shadow. I think that a lot of my demons as a player came from that. Like, I wasn't going to just be like some silver spoon kid and a soft kid. Like, I was going to bring it every day. And I think that I didn't realize it till later, but yeah, a lot of it was that.
Yeah, we have a lot of follow-up questions on those demons that we will eventually get to. But I know Tommy had a question.
Well, I was just going to say, we were talking before how you got to Florida originally.
Well, it's funny because so I had a coach, one of the Angels, rest in peace, Tyrone Green, who worked at a police athletic league, the PAL, and it was down the street from my house in Hell's Kitchen. And I remember my mom was like, "Okay, we're gonna go to this, after school program place, and this is where you're gonna play basketball. It's down the street from the house." And I was like, "I don't want to go play for the police." This guy was like, "You know what? If you stick with me, I'm gonna take you to the next level." So, this guy was from Astoria Projects in the middle of the hood, and every summer he was like, "You're not going to," my mom and my dad would be like, "Okay, let's go to St. Bart's for the summer," and this guy's like, Mr. Green would be like, "No, you're not. You're staying with me in Astoria Projects, and you're going to stay on my couch, and I'm going to get you better, and I'm going to get you right, and I'm going to get you to the next level." And he was the only one who would talk to me like that. I mean, I'm a 13-year-old kid who's 6'1", it's not like I was a top player, and he just believed in me right away. And it's one of my angels who helped me get there. So he actually was working security at ABCD camp. So I got to see the top talents as the ball boy. Actually didn't even have a bed at the camp, like at the hotel. I was sleeping on the floor for 4 summers, and he was snoring all the time. It was tough, but it was amazing. Just, okay, I could be in St. Bart's, but I'm here sleeping on the floor because I know this is where I need to be. And, got to play with Lenny Cook, who was a top player in the city, and got to play in all the street ball tournaments with Mr. Green, UDC in the Bronx, Rucker Park, Kingdom, Dykeman, Round Ball in Queens. I was ISA. I was playing in all the tournaments. And when I eventually got my shot to play at ABCD my senior year, I went from having like one offer from Marist to every school in the country just recruited me off 5 days.
My beginning of my junior year, I maybe have told this story on the podcast, but I know I've told it on other people's podcasts. Beginning of my junior year, I told the schools that were recruiting me, the primary schools, I'd kind of narrowed it down. I knew I wanted to stay on the East Coast. I knew I wanted to be close to home. So I narrowed it down to NC State, UVA, Duke, and Florida. My high school coach was like this huge Billy Donovan fan. I felt some loyalty to UVA. I wanted to go to Duke. And then this guy, Sean Miller, who has now coached a few different places, but Sean Miller was an assistant for Herb Sendek, and I really vibe with him. So I'm like, all right, these are my 4 schools. I go to NC State first. I go to UVA. I go to Duke. Florida's next. My parents aren't coming on the trip. I'm going with my older sisters, and it's their midnight madness. David Lee, who was a year older than me, had already committed, and he's going to meet me there. And I go to Duke the weekend before. Coach is like, you can commit. So I get to like Tuesday or Wednesday night. I think it was a Tuesday night. I told my parents, and I called my high school coach. I was like, I don't want to waste Florida's time. I'm going to go ahead and commit to Duke. So I called coach, committed the next day, did like a little press conference or whatever the following day, which was a Thursday. And then I thought to myself, had I gone to Florida, I may never have come back. Because
it might have been a good decision you made.
I also may not have made the NBA. I'm going to be honest with you.
That's one of those moments.
One of those moments, exactly.
What did you take an official there?
I took an official. I knew right away, Coach Donovan was just, for me, it made so much sense. Just competitive as hell. Somebody who I just really liked his balance. I just loved the way he talked basketball. They were, pressing. The big guy was at the front of the press the whole time. I just liked their style of play. And I was like, I'm going to have a lot of fun here. And I'm tired of being in cold ass New York. I'm going somewhere warm and I'm going to go have a blast. I didn't know any of my roommates at the time. And to me, it was just like, we had a lot of fun, man. And I knew that with having Coach Donovan at the lead of this thing, that I was going to get better. So there was, even at that point, there wasn't no NBA talk. I wasn't like a top player like that. I think I was like a 4-star or something like that. Nothing crazy. And, it wasn't until even my first year, David Lee was a senior my freshman year. So I was the only one who didn't play. Al Horford was playing, Corey Brewer was playing, Torian Green was playing. So I was the only roommate just hungry to play. And that summer, I had lost my confidence a little bit because, these guys are coming back from the games. They're talking about it. And I'm like the only one who's just like sitting there like I got nothing to share. And that summer, I came back to New York and I played in all the street ball tournaments. I played in Rucker Park and Dykeman, Kingdom, and I just came back with all that Harlem street ball energy, and I had a great summer. And I just came back confident, and I came back and helped lead the thing, and we ended up unranked, and everybody was like, "This is the year that Florida's not going to make the tournament." JJ was there kicking ass on the other side. And we ended up winning the chip.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I was going to unfortunately have to do it myself. Did you ever think about transferring after your freshman year, during your freshman year? Like, I would imagine, I don't know, culture shock's not the wrong word, because you obviously already had, experienced a lot of different things and moving and all that. But going down to Florida and being in a situation where you're not playing as much as you'd like or as much as you thought, did you think about transferring?
Well, the thing that compared to now, kids can transfer and play right away. In our time, can you imagine? In our time, it's crazy. Like, if you transferred, you had to sit out a year. So I was ready to hoop. I just wanted to hoop, and I knew that David was leaving, so I knew that there was an opportunity there. And even though it was tough, I still trusted. I trusted Coach.
You ever think how your life would have been different if the NIL was around then?
He might have come back for his senior year.
Can you imagine? We came back for free. I know that won't happen again.
Why? So 06, my senior year, we lose to LSU in the Sweet 16. I have one of the best shooting nights of my life, 3 for 18 from the field. You guys end up winning the chip, despite not a lot of, as you said, not a lot of preseason hype. And you're the most outstanding player at the Final Four. For somebody who, this is where I'm trying to like grasp here. For someone who's, as a teenager, sleeping on the floor as a non-participant at ABCD, who doesn't have a lot of scholarship offers going into their senior year prior to ABCD, who doesn't play a lot his freshman year, then wins a chip, is most outstanding player in the Final Four, and is a projected essentially number 1 overall pick in my draft class. Why did you go back?
I mean, for me, it was, I never took winning for granted. I never did. And I always, I felt like we had a really special group. And even though I was getting a lot of hype also because of the character that I was more flamboyant than everybody. I was just a little, so I think people gravitated towards that, but we had a lot of talent on that team. Al Horford was a great player. Corey Brewer was a great player. And when it was especially when Corey said I'm coming back, and he was probably projected, he was projected lottery. When he said, I knew how different our backgrounds were. And I knew I was okay. My family was okay. That was something that was very different. It was unique. But when Corey said, small town, Portland, Tennessee, trailer, coming from the trailer. And when he said, let's come back to school, I knew I had no say, because my brother was like, okay, I had just came back from Portland. I had went to go visit where he was from. And when I saw where he came from and he decided to come back to school, I was like, okay, there was no, that's how close we were, and going back, and I know that it's a decision that a lot of people think is crazy, but we really had the best time. And we just didn't want to you can't take happiness for granted, and you can't take winning for granted either. And even though the following year was really hard for me in terms of expectations, because nothing was good enough, because you are the projected number 1 pick. So when you have like 10 points and 8 rebounds, like and you win, that's not enough anymore. So I learned a real valuable lesson about people's expectations. And if I hadn't come back, I would have had to deal with it in other ways. But to me, it was like a lot of lessons, and back-to-back titles, especially that way, and coming back to school for free. No NIL deals, no, for free.
No $100 bills in your Nike shoebox.
No, none. Nothing. No car. We were
no duffel bags.
No
full of
duffel
cash.
bags. No duffel bags, baby. None of that. And for the love of just hooping together, I thought it was awesome. And thank God, that we won again, though, because holy shit.
Yeah.
We'd be talking a whole different story if we didn't.
I hadn't thought about this, but it's a really like amazing point you just made about the expectation. Had you gone out of college after 2006 and been, let's say, a top 3 pick, I don't know, maybe it's you, LaMarcus, Bargnani, you, LaMarcus, like whatever. Have you gone out? Dealing with those expectations and being nitpicked as a top pick, that's a much different experience than as a college student, while you're still sort of enjoying it. And you don't really know the NBA until you are in the NBA. And so the scrutiny, dealing with it, I don't want to say it was like on a smaller level, because I'm sure it felt massive, because I know how it felt in college to me. But dealing with that, it's things happen for a reason, man.
Yeah, and you know what? Things like that can just take away the joy of the thing that you love the most, and that's just going out there and hoop. Expectations can kill a career, and you see it sometimes in these kids, and it's so obvious. Like now looking at it and not playing anymore, you could tell guys who are like, play with a lot of passion, play with a lot of heart. Sometimes it's like, yo, what happened to that dude? Like, he's not even here, and he's just not having fun. He's not enjoying it. And sometimes like the expectations can do that. It just robs the joy of just going out there and just enjoying the game.
I was at an NBA game last night, and I can tell you one of those players, you just described them. And that's it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch.
What was your draft night experience like?
It was the best, man. I was young. I'm from New York City. I'm getting drafted to the Chicago Bulls. I have all my homies, all my friends with me. To celebrate that, we went to a restaurant on 45th Street, a soul food restaurant called Jezebel. It was my godmother's restaurant. We ended up going out that night and having a blast. And it's just like that draft night, just seeing all the families, just enjoying that moment. It is just, moms crying, just like pure joy. There's not a lot of jobs that can instantly, you're getting paid, you can take care of your family, and you know where you're gonna go live for the next 3-4 years. I'll never forget that moment. And also like being from New York City, that night somehow I bumped into a New York street ball legend, Big Strick. I got to see him in the club, and he was like one of my heroes. And I got to like talk to him, and I just got drafted to the Bulls, and he's just like, I forgot what we were talking about. I was pretty drunk at that point, but it was just like being in his presence. It's something I'll never forget.
I randomly actually ran into Spike Lee like 20 minutes after I left the Garden, and I was like, how on my draft night leaving the Garden do I run into Spike Lee? Like, it is just crazy how that works. I wanted to ask you about, the reason I'm going to ask you this, I'll give you a little background real quick. I want to ask you about your teammates, your rookie year, voting to suspend you, right? I want to ask you about this. So Grant Hill, when he came on the podcast, told a story about me being late to practice. And it was the third time I was late. They tied me up, they hazed me, whatever. He didn't try to pee on me, like that sort of thing. And the difference between this tardiness and the previous two, I got fined for all of them, obviously. The difference, though, was I was actually in the rotation at this point. Prior to, I wasn't. And the coaches and Otis, the GM, essentially suspended me for a game, but they just basically said, we're taking you out of the rotation. And that was it. There was no like public suspension. There was no, his teammates voted him to be suspended. Like, what the fuck did you do, man?
I had I just came back from winning 2 championships. I'm 20 years old. I think I had a little arrogance to me. And I think that it drove the vets nuts. So it was obvious that when I got there, I was always a hard worker, but it was obvious that they were trying to, Rook, chill out. Like if I tell you to pick up your phone at 4 a.m. and go get me some shit, you're going to go get me donuts. And because I said so. So I'm like, okay, so this is the first kind of, I never got this vibe before of just like people like trying to debo me, So I remember Skiles, I worked out every day at the Birdo. As soon as I got drafted, I got straight to Chicago. I'm working all summer. Skiles comes up to me, he's like, yo, you're gonna start. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start? I'm like with Ben Wallace and all these guys. I'm like, yo, this is Ben Gordon, Kirk Heinrich, and I'm just like, yo, this is so exciting. And the team's good. We're going through plays, like after 5 minutes, he's like, turn your jersey around. He's like, this isn't gonna. So he had like a plan the whole time from the first practice that he was gonna fuck with me. So okay, I see what's going on here. Like they're trying to humble me, right? So, we come out with really bad start just to the year. And I don't think I've ever lost. I think we lose like not 8 games in a row in first 10 games. I'm like, this is, I've never lost 8 games before in my life. Like all we've been doing is winning. And so I'm like pissed off about the whole thing. And I got into it with Ron Adams, assistant coach, who was my coach. Worked with him all summer. Love the guy, But we got into it that day, and it got out of hand. I think if I remember, I think he told me to go fuck myself. He told me to go fuck myself, and I was like, "What?" And I went crazy. I wanted to fight him, and they were like, "Get your shit, go back to Chicago. We're in Philly." And he's like, "Get your shit, get the fuck out of shoot around. You're going home." So I'm like, Jesus, this is 10 games in. I'm getting sent home already. And I go back. I go back. I call coach. I'm like, "Coach, man, I'm so sorry, man. I really fucked up. Like we make up right away. Like, I mean, we're to this day we're close." So I get suspended. The next game we're playing in. We have practice in Atlanta, and so I have a good practice, getting ready. Ben Wallace in the huddle goes, as players, we feel like one game wasn't enough. So you're not playing tonight again. And I'm looking at my teammates. I'm like looking around, like I could tell like some of these guys didn't even know. I'm like, "Yo, you guys, what?" And I remember Joe Smith going, "Did he stutter?" I'm like, holy shit. I mean, mind you, Ben Wallace is our captain. He has 2 headbands on his arms, So I'm like, I'm 220 pounds, like tiny, like just rinky dink. We end up playing in Orlando the next night. We get smoked we suck. Get smoked by 50. And I remember going into the locker room. And it's like, at this point, it's like I'm turning on the TV and it's like Joe Rogan's like, "No, I don't think, this isn't college." And he's just, people are just like coming at me. They're talking at me on the TV. It's like I'm getting calls in my hotel room from like media and shit, like what's going on. I mean, so this is like the start of my NBA career. And so we play Orlando, we get smoked by 50. And I remember, guys were like clowning around in the locker room, like laughing. And I just like stood up to Body and I was like, "Yo, Body, this is bullshit. This is bullshit." I was like, I'm the one getting suspended and you guys are over here fucking around and laughing and shit. And we just got smoked by 50. And it was bad. So we had to get like broken up. And I think Body always, like, from that point on,
is
Ben Wallace.
Is Ben, okay.
I think he respected the fact that I stood up for myself. And I think a lot of people in that organization felt like, okay, this kid actually, because nobody wanted to tell him shit, And I think all those things were just, it was part of my growing up, But I did get suspended by my teammates. That's the story.
I remember I was going through my own shit, right? My first few years. I don't remember you not playing. So when we're doing this background on this, I didn't realize we had such a shared experience early in our careers. And when we read the article about you getting into it with Ron, I thought back to my career, and there were times when I would witness guys try to fight in the locker room with a coach after a game, sometimes at practice. There's one time, I firmly believe every player is allowed 2 blow-ups, no matter your status on the team. It's 82 games. It's peaks and valleys. 2 blow-ups. It's what you're allowed. You go over that, then you're a problem. So we play in Detroit. I'm with the Clippers. This is my last year with the Clippers. We play in Detroit, and they're running backside action for KCP. Okay. So we had started playing severe drop coverage that year. It was our first year doing drop coverage. Before that, we're strong side tags, we're low man help, pulling over early. So now we're in drop with DJ. So early in the game, I'm fighting through Tobias Harris, right? First down screen, and then a DHO with Andre Drummond. And I've got to fight through that. And if early in the game, KCP hit like 2 pull-up jumpers because DJ's in drop coverage, right? And I'm like, I'm doing my job. I'm forcing a contested, rear view contested. So all of a sudden in the second half, Brendan O'Connor, our defensive guy that year, is like, I want you to chase over Tobias. I want you to chase over Andre Drummond. And then as soon as KCP starts going downhill, I want you to veer back. This is after he has the ball. Veer back to Tobias. All right. Tell me to do that, I'll do it. So now all of a sudden, I've got a 25-foot closeout to Tobias, right? So he, I think, drove by me one time. I think he got an open look. I don't know if he made a 3. They do it a couple times. And next day in film, Brendan's like, hey, let's go over this play, right? And I'm just like, I don't understand this coverage. Like, I understand what a veer back is. What you're asking me to do is not a veer back. You're asking me to guard a guy up until basically the top of the key. And then once he passes, go and run and close out on another guy. Tobias Harris is a fucking good player. So we kind of start chatting. Voices are raised. And he says to me, do your fucking job, right? Do your fucking job. And this is my 4th year in LA. And it's well chronicled. We had a lot of bullshit on that team. And I'm like, do my fucking job. I'm like, that's all I do is my fucking job. I'm the one who's like non-drama. And I told him to go fuck himself. DJ grabbed me, threw me on the bus. And that was it. Like, there was no suspension. And Doc, next morning we go for breakfast, pregame before we play Indiana. And Doc's like, Brennan, JJ, you guys good? And we're like, yeah, we're good. He's like, all right, let's move on. And that was it. That was it. But like, I like the blow-ups. It shows you care.
That's dope, man. I like hearing people at their lowest moments,
My question for
their lowest moments. Got a lot of low moments, guys.
A lot
of low moments. It's too long for a whole podcast. My question for both of you guys, and there's obviously, some relevance to this question from the last 2 weeks, is when these blow-ups happen, is there a
line?
Well, A, is there a line, but then also, like, there are things that should stay in-house. And it does seem like in this situation in Golden State, everybody was aligned that this should be a thing that they can handle in-house until it wasn't anymore. And are there, not that you have to necessarily comment on this particular thing, but it's more just like, are there things that happen on a team? Like, what was kind of messed up by your situation from the outside looking in was that it got leaked that your teammates did this to you. Like, that everybody had a comment on the fact, we can read about it 15 years later that your teammates suspended you, rather than you guys just working through your shit kind of without anybody in the press knowing or any of the fans knowing or anything like that. Like, is there a trust that gets broken when this stuff gets out, rather than just handling it, no matter how fucked up it is, inside the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way that the world is constructed right now, it's just impossible to keep things in-house anymore. The NBA is just, everything is public. It's insane. On the Draymond situation, I mean, everybody has something to say about it. But it's like, imagine, you at your worst and somebody leaking a video of you at your worst. Just like, think about your worst moment last week. It probably wasn't pretty. And imagine somebody taking a video of that and leaking it. So, and everybody having to say something about it. So it's not about pointing fingers. I think that the leaking thing is just so lame and so corny. And I think it's just where we are as like just society, I guess.
I should have mentioned, by the way, for like my teammates that were with me my rookie year, and Brian Hill, Otis, everybody in the front office, like, they did a good job of protecting me. I mean, I came one day like an hour and a half late to practice, right? Like an hour and a half late. And like, it never got out. the stuff with like me yelling at, by the way, Brendan O'Connor's my guy, BOC is my guy, Bubs. And like, I didn't think it was anything the day after. I knew in the moment I was pissed. That was like the 417th worst thing that happened in those 4 years. So like it wasn't going to leak. But I actually wanted to follow up on, because you brought up the demons earlier. And I like how you phrase it. I like how you phrase it as at your worst. You know, I went on a few times ESPN last year talking specifically about Draymond and how his emotions, his edge, his shit talking, his bantering with the crowd, his trolling players, which we saw throughout the playoffs. Like, that's part of what makes him great. Obviously, his basketball mind, his passing, his defense, his communication. Like, he's a great player. But part of what makes him great is all the shit that comes with that, right? And I'm not saying you guys are the same. And by the way, I'm not condoning him punching Jordan Poole. Let's be clear on that. But I'm not saying you guys are the same. But to bring that edge every day to work and to sort of acknowledge that you are going to have those demons pop up from time to time, how difficult is it to toe that line on a consistent basis where you don't go over the edge?
I mean, it's a fight every day. It's an emotional game, you know, and you know, there's pros and cons, just like you said. I think that there are similarities energetically to what I had to bring for the teams that I played for, and I see a lot of similarities with Draymond in the way that he plays the game. And first of all, it's 82 games. When you're playing that fourth game in 5 nights, you're dead. Like, you're tired as hell. So you have to have guys who are going to like bring it and make sure that the guys like are going to bring it too. And how do you do that? And, you know, sometimes it's like getting a tech or getting into it with somebody on the other team. But more than just, it's just to get the other guys going. Like, how do we, I think that, and, you know, competition is not always pretty. And you know what? I don't even like to come on these things and then like, and like, you know, we just talked about an incident that happened my rookie year. I love my teammate. All my teammates that I ever had around my, like, I'm not saying I was like some perfect little angel. Like, right. I deserved all the shit that was sent to me. Like, I deserved it. Like, I was late all the time. Like, I wasn't so I want to make that clear. I'm not over here like getting on a platform and just like talking shit and just, no. Like, I love my teammates. That I'll do anything for my teammates. Still to this day, if one of my teammates asks me and needs me, I'm there. So that's just my loyalty and you know what? And I also like try to, when we talk about, you know, incidents and stuff like that, it's just like I try to preserve our times together and like protect them.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to go on this or go on to write things and talk to people about, you know, the ugly. But, you know, these are the best times of our lives. Like, fuck, like playing basketball for a living in the NBA. It's like, there's not a lot of people who can say that. And, you know, I try to protect, you know, because when I see these guys, it means something to me. Like, if I see Flip Murray, you know, it gets me hype because, yo, we had so many battles together, and I cherish that. So even though that was a bad moment, like if I see Ben Wallace, it's like, yo, right. I'm so happy. I'm like seeing my big bro. Like,
I think this is where. Again, this is not a take. I'm not making a take here on the Draymond Jordan Poole thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know sort of what the recovery process of that is. I don't. My point is, when you go through incidents, anything, a conversation on the court, an argument in the locker room, wins, losses, whatever, like that is a shared experience. And I feel the same way about every coach and teammate that I've ever had. Like, I think I asked you the question because your father played an individual sport and you ended up playing a team sport. But for me, it was that shared experience that made me fall in love with basketball. It was that connectivity. It was going to battle with someone, competing with someone, relying on someone. You know, that to me was the beautiful part of the game.
It's also like, you know, our society is so divided, you know, in so many ways. To have camaraderie with people that come from so many different backgrounds, you realize how rare that is too, you know? And it's like, Ben Wallace, like, he's from the dirty South, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like a kid from, you know, I'm a privileged kid from Paris, France.
Yeah.
Like, we're drinking beers after the game in the sauna. You know, I cherish that. Like, I had a poster of this guy on my wall as a kid, and now I'm drinking beers and like getting to hear stories about, you know, his times on the Bad Boys and you know, his time on the Detroit Pistons kicking. I mean, it's the blessings, you know. I don't. It's all blessings. So I don't take that for granted.
It feels great to have basketball back in full swing. You can already tell this is going to be an amazing season, so be sure to get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can make any $5 NBA moneyline bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins.
And check this out. In addition to the usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings up to 100% with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in, and place a stepped-up same-game parlay today.
With payouts bigger than ever, DraftKings Sportsbook is where I go to bet on the NBA. I'm particularly excited about some same-game parlays in the New Orleans Pelicans Golden State game on Friday night. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code JJ, make any $5 bet this week, and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with promo code JJ. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
Speaking of battles, JJ and I were talking about this earlier today. What do you remember about the 2009 Celtics series?
What do I remember? I remember that I didn't know what NBA basketball was until I hit the playoffs. Like, when the first time, that was my first playoff series, and it changed my career. I was like, oh, because I was like, yo, this regular season thing is just like, this is not as fun. This is not as competitive and as fun as it was in college. You know, college was just way more competitive. Like, this regular season, people are just kind of joking around, and it's, you know, it's a different mentality because you have to move on. You know, you can't lose a game and just like let that shit linger for a couple days. You have to move on right away. When the playoffs hit, though, it's, you know, one mistake can cost you the game. I mean, Ray Allen hit a shot on me. It's still like, it still bothers me to this day. We win game one, and I'm supposed to switch the pin down. Ray Allen's coming off, and Kirk is screaming my name, and I literally turned my head like for 1 second. I contest the shot, great. I swear to God, I touched the ball on the contest. Bang, hits the 3. 1-1. Just like that. It's like my mistake. I fucked up. I let Cap down. I let Kirk Heinrich down. To this day, I see Kirk, and I'm like, when I tell him this story, it's like goosebumps, you know? It's like, it brings me back. It triggers me to that. I mean, and then you go in, okay, we lose in 7. It was a great series, you know, but okay, now it's like, okay, I see what this is all about. I got to get stronger. I got to get better. I feel like I feel that pressure, and now I think that it set the tone for the rest of my career.
I specifically remember watching Game 6, which was one of 4 overtime games in that series. Game 6 went to 3 overtimes. Ray Allen was fucking insane in that game. I think he had a 51 ball, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm sitting there for Orlando, knowing that if Boston wins, I've got to go chase Ray for the next however many games. And I'm like, the Bulls are just letting this guy heat up. He's going to be in such a great rhythm. But Game 6, the steal and dunk, that moment, is that one of, if not the best moments of your career?
I mean, and the crazy part about that moment is people in Chicago want to talk about that moment more than anything. And, you know, it happened the second year in my career, and we lost the series. But the respect that we got because of the way that we competed, it's crazy. People only want to talk about that series. Like, we had other great series that we won. It's funny because that series, for some reason, really, it was the identity of what, you know, people in Chicago want to represent. Like, we played hard as hell, and it was a war. And I think people were really proud of that team.
Was that the game one you guys won in Boston? Remember, Derrick went off, and that was his second year, and it was kind of that was obviously his first big playoff moment. Was that something? Could you see at the time, like, okay, this is who this guy is going to be? Then did you know after game one, like, this is a little bit different than maybe you expected?
No, I knew. We knew before that. We knew during the season, during regular season, that he was special. He always. I'll never forget when Vinny down there goes like, "We're playing against Steve Nash. Steve Nash is the MVP. Playing against Phoenix, and we're watching film, and Vinny goes, Kirk, you got Steve Nash. And there goes, no, he doesn't. I got Steve Nash. And he goes, no, our best on-ball defender is Kirk Heinrich. Kirk Heinrich, you're guarding Steve Nash. And Derrick, he's painfully shy. No, I got Steve Nash. He's like, I'm not running from no matchup. And the whole, and the whole game, he's just like, that's how he wanted to be special from the get. And people, just because he was quiet, people thought that, he was like some like real humble kid. No, his dreams and the way that he carried himself was like, he was a big dreamer. He thought he knew he was great. He knew he was destined for greatness.
There's a lot to talk about with Derrick. And something you said earlier to me was you felt like anytime pre or post injury, like Derrick on the floor, there was hope. There was hope that you could win. There was hope that you could win a championship. I think in some ways too, just he represents that for so many people in Chicago, if that makes sense. When he was, prior to him getting hurt, in his sort of, I guess he had a very short-lived prime, unfortunately, in terms of his athleticism. Certainly not in terms of his game, because he continues to play high-level basketball. But was there a specific move, a specific dunk, a transition play or something that like you think stands above the rest?
I mean, one in particular, no. To me, it was just more like, okay, you get a defensive rebound and then you pass it to the guy, and then in 2 dribbles, he's the first one down the floor with the ball. I mean, there was nobody else I had ever seen do that before. I like to get defensive rebounds and maybe take a couple dribbles myself. That's what I like to do. But then I also realized, like, I'm playing with, the fastest guy. He had like a layup package that was just insane. Left hand, right hand. It was just the way he was doing it. The fear that he put in people who played against him. The top guys, I would see fear in their eyes all the time. And I was like, okay, because he was quiet, but he was a killer. Very like for me personally, I was like more, I was loud. I was, I played with like a real. This guy was just mellow-headed the whole time, just level-headed. No moment was too big for him, and it was just awesome to have a floor general like that.
Yeah, for me, it's the Dragic dunk when he dunked on Goran Dragic, like that.
Shout out Goran, man.
Yeah,
I mean, that guy.
Oh, it's one of the best competitors. I love going against him. He was great. Derrick was he was special, and still is. I mean, it's amazing to me too Not just I mentioned the hope, but like you see like his popularity, like even now, whether it's jersey sales, he sat out seasons and was like in the top 5 to 10 vote getters for All-Star break. What do you think it was about, whether it was his game, his story, his personality, there was something that just like captured people. And as his teammate, you probably have a good idea of what captured sort of your passion and your love for playing with him.
Well, I think that, first of all, he was a hometown kid. So he was from the hood, from the South Side. And, he looked and he's from Chicago. Like, some people say they're from Chicago. They're not really from Chicago from there. They're from the, outskirts, There's a lot of those.
Northbrook, Glenbrook,
yeah, they're from there. They're from all that. That doesn't count.
Westbrook, whatever.
He's from the hood, from the South Side. So he was Chicago, and I don't care his run at his peak. If you're from Chicago, you want it to be that. You want to be the number one pick from the Bulls, having that building rocking the way that he did, and no, the hope was real, and the hope all around the city. And the thing that was so beautiful about it is that, he was a painfully shy guy. So you didn't see an arrogance to him in the way he conducted himself because he was shy.
Yeah.
But even though in his mind, he was like, yo, I'm great. He didn't talk like that. He wasn't coming he carried himself like, because he was a legit superstar, but he carried himself completely different than everybody else. And when you talk about stardom and being that young and having to deal with that much people, just that much attention, that much people telling you how great you are, and
in your hometown too.
In your hometown, just the way he handled it was something that, as teammates, we could be really proud of. I was like, yo, this guy's like, he's not walking to practice with, glass shades on and he was chill. He just wanted to be with the guys. Like, he was chill with it. So there's not too many I've seen along who have dealt with that kind of stardom and really doesn't want it, like legit though. Not, oh, I don't want it, but
But I'm secretly looking at every Instagram comment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna ask about him looking back now a little bit. We haven't had him on the show yet, but the amount of mental toughness it takes to go through after the injury, the next year of talk about media people and everybody having a comment about his body that they don't actually know anything about. They're just sort of talking. But then he gets hurt again. And we've had a couple guys on recently who've talked about this, and Grant is another one who's just like, your body's breaking down and you're one of the best athletes in the world. There's nothing you can do about it, and how frustrating that is. But to go through an experience like that over the course of 2 or 3 years and then come back and have a really good career. I mean, he's still in the middle. He's still in the midst of it. So we don't even know what's next, but just to it wasn't like he had that run and then he went away. And so that takes a level of mental toughness just to get back to that point.
No, I think that's why people, that's why he's the people's champ, because he did go through that. And there was a lot of people in Chicago that turned on him because he didn't play back that year. And, you're on every commercial. You just signed a huge deal with Adidas, and you're on every commercial for Adidas, like, the return and this, and you're like, you don't feel ready to play. A lot of people that were, giving him that high praise. It's like I guess the MVP is the gift and the curse. It's a gift because you're the youngest MVP ever, but it's a curse because you have to deal with really high scrutiny all the time. And he had to do it, dealing with an ACL in a playoff game where, I mean, to me personally, it was like that year we had just lost in the conference finals to Miami, and we had upgrades and we were hungry and we were ready for all that smoke. And, you know, unfortunately we didn't get back to that. And it's like, it just shows like you cannot take none of this for granted, because just like that, that's what I learned from the whole experience. It's just like, you cannot take anything for granted in this league, because it just like that, the whole thing changes.
Right. I mean, you guys were obviously the 1 seed in 11. Were you guys the 1 seed in the East in 12 too?
Yeah.
I think you were 50-16 that year, before you lost to Philly after Derrick went down. And sort of the aftermath of that injury, you know, you're talking about a legitimate championship window. And within, you know, 2 to 4 years, that window, you know, just has evaporated.
Yeah.
And you think Derrick, I mean, was he 22? I think 22 in his MVP season.
Yeah.
You think you've got a 10-year window at least. And it's just, the NBA is nuts. And by the way, I should mention here, 2010 free agency. You know, I signed with the Bulls. I was going to be part of that number, that 60 whatever win season, and be your teammate. And I used to think to myself, in watching you run dribble handoffs and pin downs, and you know, I was a good cutter, so like your little, you know, high post facilitator, back cut, you know, all that shit, man. I'm like, man, I would have eaten with Joe.
I would have ate too, man, for real, because I was trying to make that happen like crazy. Because Derrick was a guy, he was not recruiting anybody, and he was not trying to, you know, talk to the GMs about who we should bring in. He thought that he was good enough, you know, to get it done himself. Like, that was his mentality early on. So I was kind of like the one that like the GMs and all that would talk to see how. I was like, yo, for me, I was like, if JJ comes here, I was like, I'm going to eat, because I couldn't score in the post for shit. You know, I couldn't shoot for shit. So I needed somebody that I could pass it to shoot. And then if he couldn't get the shot, now I was in the open floor. Now I could get my game off. So JJ would have been perfect.
Little pocket pass. By the way, you brought up your shooting, and I don't know if you've ever watched our YouTube channel. We recently put up a video.
I shoot like you.
Of Tommy shooting. And the comments were basically being like, Tommy shoots like Joakim Noah. Was there a physical reason why you chose to shoot like that? Did anybody ever try to get you to change your shot?
Man, so many times. Shout out Ron Adams. He used to make me have like this little like a paddle. Oh my God, that shit was so embarrassing. He used to make me come to like an hour before practice, and he used to put a paddle on my left hand, so I had to like, my elbow was still out. It was just never worked out for me. Never worked. It was always a problem.
I was gonna ask you about the 2010 summer, when all the craziness is going on with Bron.
Right. Let's be clear. I had to wait for every other free agent to sign
before
the Bulls gave me cap space.
When all this happened, you know how good you guys are. You know what your potential is and everything like that. Like, what are you thinking watching all this stuff?
I'm thinking that we're gonna get I'm thinking they're coming to Chicago.
Was there a period where you were like, you really thought that they were coming?
Yeah. I mean, I had Chris Bosh basically told me, yo, I'm coming to Chicago. If Chris Bosh came to Chicago, I mean, do they go to Miami? Do they stay in Miami? I don't know. I tried to recruit all of them. Like, I didn't care if it didn't matter. Whatever it took to get the Bulls better, I was doing it. Derrick wasn't doing none of that shit. I was doing all that. So, I mean, people don't know that, but yes, I did try to recruit LeBron. Yes, I did try to recruit D Wade. And I think that that's what a lot of the animosity came from. That it was just like, yo, man, he's like, Chris straight up told me he was fucking coming to Chicago. So I think that it made things like it fueled the fire that much more.
I feel like you're one of those guys. Listen, you've described that. I feel like you're one of those guys. Like KG was like this. You know, I'm trying to think. There's a few guys like this. Like, I can simultaneously be competitive, but also say, hey, even though we're not on the same team, you're my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're one of those guys that, like, if you're not on your team, you have a deep-seated hatred in your heart for them.
And you know what? And that's something that I have to learn and grow and do better. That's my shit. That's my bullshit. So I think that as I got older, I realized that that's not a good way to be. I think you need to be competitive as you can between the lines, and then once that's over, you got to let it go, because otherwise you're just going to carry way too much that's unnecessary baggage. Like, you know, I'm done playing. Like, it's not cool to be competitive off the court. It's not a good energy to have, because and people love it though. People love you for being competitive, because, you know, competition can get really ugly. You can see great parts in people, but you can see really dark shit in people. And I think that's why people love sports. But you don't want to be competitive at home. You can't be competitive. You don't want to be competitive with your brothers, your kids. Like, it's not your wife. Like, you gotta. So for me personally, it's like, I know that that's something that that I deal with, because the competition shit is how I was raised. It's in my DNA. You know, my grandfather was a soccer player. He played with an edge. My dad, if you saw how he played tennis, he played with an edge. It's in me. I see it in my daughter. Like, when we play like Monopoly, and like, she's like, if she loses, she's just like. So I know it's like something that's in us, but at the end of the day, I know that it's something that I learned along my journey. I actually have an interesting story about that. It's like when all this shit happened with the Knicks, and my first year, I had a knee injury, I had a shoulder injury, 2 surgeries, I had a drug suspension. You know, I didn't want to play basketball anymore. And I remember I was like, okay, I get past all that, and I'm back in the gym, and I'm like a shell of myself. Like, it's probably like my second or third time after those 2 surgeries, back in the gym, and I'm at Pepperdine in Malibu. D Wade has his coach on the other side of the court, and I'm on the other side of the court, and I'm embarrassed. I'm like, yo, I can barely move. And I remember and it was like, you know, it was bad. Like, okay, we were competing against these guys, but it was bad blood. Like, they weren't fucking with us. We weren't fucking with them. And I really, like, it was personal, you know? And I remember like him being in the gym, and like, I didn't even know where to put myself. And I remember him on the sideline being like, yo, good luck and keep it up. And I don't even know if he knows this, but it just like meant a lot to me, and it said a lot. I was like, yo, you know what? There are things that are just like bigger than this, you know? And I don't know, it was deep, and it just like made me really rethink my whole thing, because I was like turning into like a persona that like wasn't like really who I was, you know?
Do you feel like during this time period that this lack of desire to play, was this fueled somewhat by obviously the injuries, potentially maybe a decline in play? I know that last season in Chicago, you were coming off the bench here and there. The New York market, whatever the fuck was going on with the Knicks at the time, like all of that contributing to that. Like, is that ultimately what?
I think the last year,
because I mean, I had my last year, you know, I was just like, I don't want to play. And I was fortunate that, like, you know, I'd done 15 years and I was pretty old and my body was broken. And I was like, all right, I'm good. I can walk away. I can walk away happy. But it seemed to me like, despite the injuries, there was still enough left for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. The last year in Chicago, I had lost my confidence in a way that I had never, things that were like really easy for me to do, I couldn't do. I don't know. There was like it was a glitch. I didn't love basketball anymore. It was like, this is becoming a job. Like, I'm playing because I want to get to a next deal, and I'm not enjoying it. So if I'm not enjoying it, I can't be like a passionate leader with an edge, like, because I'm not having fun anymore. That was me because I actually enjoyed what I was doing. When it started becoming about money, and then things changed, my role changed, and that last year it was rough. But then I ended up going to New York. I was thinking like coming home would make it better, and it didn't. New York is.
Well, you've said before that you party a lot once you got here. That you playing in New York was not a good idea.
I mean, it was not because I was. I think that got. I mean, fuck, I was hurt, bro. Like, I was hurt. I wasn't playing anyway.
Right.
Like, it was like, what do you want me to do? Like, not like, okay, I'm at Madison Square Garden, year 2. I'm coming off of surgeries. You guys don't want me to play. I'm getting shitted on by the whole Garden, like, for real. Like, the whole Garden just, and I can't even suit up and prove myself. Like, what did you think was going to happen? I was just, I was busting my ass. I was working every day. I was ready to play. That's a whole other story. It was it was rough, man. It was, what can I tell you? It was rough times.
We've talked about this a little bit. Is it more like mentally taxing? And Russ is going through a version of this in LA right now too, where it's like you grow up in the city, grow up a fan of this organization, when you're a kid at all this point, and then you get to a place where, for whatever reason, shit isn't working. Is it that much more challenging that it's the Knicks than it's like you're in Phoenix or something and it's just isn't clicking?
I grew up here. Like, this is home. When people are talking shit and you're from here, like, not like, I'm not from Long Island. Like, I'm from the city. I could walk from my house to the Madison Square Garden. I used to go there. I was in the Garden when Larry Johnson hit the 4-point shot. Like, I was a fan of that organization. The hardest thing was when that team, the day I got suspended for drugs, the 99 New York Knicks came to the practice facility and I couldn't even face like my childhood heroes because I was so embarrassed. It was like, it was deep, man. It's like, and people think that because you're getting paid or whatever that, it's okay. No, I was dealing with some like heavy shit. But I'm happy all that stuff happened because I feel like I'm better. I'm more well shaped and I'm more well versed, and I have like that story too. It's like you have your wins, you have your victories, and you have your hard times, and you got to go through that. And I knew I still had basketball left, and I had to dig deep in a completely different way. It wasn't like no sports therapist was helping me out of this thing. It was like I had to figure out a way. Like, when I tell you I was ready to do anything to figure this thing out. And, I get kicked off the Knicks, after the fight with Hornacek. I know you wanted to get into that. So
you brought it up, guy. You brought it up.
So
hold on a second.
Let me take a second too. I need a second.
Well, we're going to pick up where we left off. But since you brought it up, tell us the story of you and Jeff Hornacek getting into it.
Let me take a couple breaths. The first year, I would say he was in a tough spot because, he was the coach, and then, Phil was also, even though they gave Phil Jackson a position as the president, he was a coach at heart. So he couldn't really coach the way that he wanted to coach. That team was actually it was a fun team to be around. I actually really liked all the guys. We just losing in New York is as tough as it gets. It's the magnifying glass. So when things are good, things are great. When things are bad, they're real bad. I think there was a lot of frustration. That first year, 2 surgeries, shell of myself, drug suspension. The next year comes around. I'm hungry as hell. Like, I want to play. And I don't get that opportunity. And I think Hornacek was like, you know what? Like, I've had enough of Joakim. But he was also like, you keep playing. Your time's gonna come. Like, he was doing that whole shit. Like, so I'm like, it's February. We're losing games. We're playing Golden State. Kristaps hurt. Everybody's hurt that game. So I'm like, okay, I get a call. We're practicing. I'm going hard, like, every day. And I get a call from the GM, and he's like, yo, be ready. You're gonna play tomorrow. Fuck, finally. It's February. I've been getting shit on for fucking 4 months at the guard and sitting there and no, you're not dressing with your teammates. Don't sit on the bench. Sit behind the bench. Yeah, you're the guy who's making the money, you're gonna take this shit. Right? So I've been dealing this for 3 months. Right? So I'm already, you can imagine.
On edge.
On edge like a motherfucker, to say the least. And so I go hard in the practice. I have a great practice. So it's like, okay, nobody's playing. I deserve to play. He puts me in at the 4 minute, with 4 minutes left in the game. First play, they give the ball to Sticks. In and out, cross, get to my left hook, bucket. I'm walking down the court. I'm feeling myself. Feeling good. Just made my first little left hook. He takes me out. I lost it. So I go to the shower. I'm not listening to the speech. I'm so pissed. And the next thing you know, the next day in practice, he tried to say something to me. It didn't go well. It could have got a lot worse. I think it took me like 30 minutes just to get off the court. Everybody's like, all right, just go home. I'm like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. I stayed on that court. Everybody had to wait for like 30 minutes. The security's like, Joe, because I knew this might be my last moment as an NBA player. It was ugly. And it was February, that's when the partying started. Because now this is the first time in my life where I'm like, I'm in New York City. I'm the bad guy. I just got in a fight with the coach. And I'm 32 years old, and this could be it. So I'm like, okay, I got paid. Either I'm done or I'm going to have to really fucking dig deep right now, because these guys are playing basketball. I haven't played basketball in like 3 years, really. And either you're going to have to get in a really clean routine and really go and dig deep and fight for your career, or it's over.
And you ended up, after the partying, I assume.
After a week of partying, I was like, this is not it.
Yeah. And
this is not it. And I'm not talking about like partying, like it was dark. It was dark as hell.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm going to go have a couple beers. I'm going hard. So, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to go to California. Shout out to Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese, who let me stay in their house. Sauna, ice, every day, clean up, get in a routine. Chris Johnson and their family over there took me in. I was around basketball, got my confidence up. And mind you, it had been like also like, I'm still dealing with all this mental stuff with basketball, like shooting the ball, this, like I'm very similar things to, I don't know, we're not going to say names. But anyway, very similar to people who have gone through that. I get the call in December. Shout out to Ross Burns. Shout out to Pro Hoops in the house. My brother, who like stayed with me and just like made sure, stuck with basketball. Like every day we were training new unorthodox stuff, like just whatever it took. I get a call from the Grizzlies in December. I mean, I remember I came in, first practice, you know, I was so ready. It felt so good. Like first practice, I mean, those guys were just like exhausted from a game the next day. I mean, I was like playoff, like just, it was just dripping. Like I dunked on Jaren Jackson. He's a rookie. I'm like, yeah, Rook, like it's going to be like that now. And he's like, oh, like Jaren Jackson's like nice too. I love that story. Every time I see Jaren, I was like, remember that first practice when I dunked on your fucking ass? And then like the next day, we're playing the Clippers. Fucking hit a fucking 18-footer. I had 4 points. It was the one of the best moments of my career, was like being able to come back from all that and having like a 4-and-4 night. And just appreciating, just like really just appreciating being on the floor. Like that's the thing that for all the guys out there that like lose the love of the game, until it's taken from you, it's like you cannot take none of this shit for granted. Like there's no, oh, I was this, or I was an all-star, or because it's just like that. It's like, yo, you could be out. So it's like for all the guys out there who just like are not enjoying it, like, and just don't take it for granted. Do not take it for granted. That Memphis year was one of my favorite careers. It was one of my favorite moments in my career.
I want to talk, before we let you go, a little bit about sort of what you're doing now and your retirement. And I didn't have it in my notes, but only because you brought up Laird's name. And I've heard this story from Ross. So Ross Burns and Tim Burns, they trained me my last 4 years in the NBA. Shout out Pro Hoops, great guys.
Shout out Pro Hoops.
Can you tell the bathtub story with Laird?
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough one. You know, I was coming after the Memphis year. I feel like I had a great year. I think I had 7 and 6 in 15 minutes coming off the bench. I'm actually happy. I was like, you know what? I can do this coming off the bench, bring some energy to a team. You know, I think I haven't, you know, I have something I could do for another 3-4 years. I think I could do this. And I remember the Lakers were looking for a big. I ended up training for they took Dwight. And I didn't, in free agency, I had offers. I had 2-year offers. I had mid-level. And I was like, you know what? I want to play. I want to play on a championship team. I want to win a championship. So I don't make the Lakers. They take Dwight instead. And I get a call from the Clippers a couple of days before camp. And they're like, look, listen, if you're healthy and you're good, we're gonna take you. So I'm getting ready I'm at Laird's house. I'm doing sauna and ice. It's the day before training camp. I mean, you know, I'm excited as hell. Stainless steel tub. Put the ice in the tub. I'm dragging it to put it closer to the sauna, and I cut my Achilles on the stainless steel tub. So,
like a clean slice.
Clean slice, like right at the Achilles, the day before training camp.
But my understanding was that because of how you sliced it, they actually could do a somewhat, I don't want to say quick, but like the repair was different, right?
Bro, it was over after that.
Done.
I mean, it was like I came back. The Clippers were like nice enough to like bring me in. I fought my ass off to try to make it, then bubble. And then it was just like, yo, I mean, I couldn't move, man. I could barely dunk. It's like, yo, I mean, these guys are good, man. Like you're not. So, I mean, it was a tough way to go out. But just like you said, it's like, you know, when you get to that point, I'm happy that I fought my ass off from that again to try to come back. But then it was like, man, you know what? Like, I got kids. I got a beautiful wife at home who's awesome. Like, let me just take care of my family and just handle my business right now and do what I got to do. It's like basketball. It's like I can't do this anymore. And I literally shot every bullet out of my gun to try to do this, but there's also a point where you have to be honest with yourself and say, you know what? I did everything I could.
You're doing an unnamed doc so far, unnamed documentary with Richard Brown on the Basketball Africa League. We actually were blessed enough prior to you jumping on with us here to watch the sizzle in the other room. We both got goosebumps. It looks like an incredible doc. Your passion for Africa, your investment, both in terms of resources and time, and really your just willingness to sort of help grow that region of the world, obviously comes from your background. But that experience of these last couple of years, what have you sort of gotten out of it?
Well, I think that for me, it's one of the biggest blessings of my life. And just to be in a position to be a part owner of a league in Africa, to grow basketball is something that I didn't know would ever be possible. Throughout my career, I always tried to do things in Cameroon, whether it's basketball camps or make investments, and it never worked out. And now with the NBA, with the NBA platform and with, Amadou Fall, people that I really, really believe in and trust, I'm able to be a part of something that's like so much bigger than just a basketball league, to be honest. I mean, it's like the calls that I'm getting from old players who want to be a part of it, or, just everybody has such an amazing path and amazing story, and everybody wants to be able to, share their experience, and then to be able to do it in Africa is really, really, it's really, really special, because a lot of the guys, especially from the inner city, everybody knows your heritage is from there at some point. So, and, as Americans, you don't get that connection. Like black people in France, for example, they know, I'm French, but I'm from Senegal. Like, I'm French, but I'm from Benin. Or like, Americans don't get that. So it's like, it's really, really interesting. Like people who come from the diaspora, when they come back, the perspective that they get. So this summer, we did an unbelievable trip with Derrick Rose and his high school team. Shout out Tim Flowers for bringing the guys. I thought it was just, one of the most, powerful trips I've ever been on, just to be with 30 guys from the South Side, 15 young men who just, came with an open heart and open mind. And we got to, even though the connection was basketball, and they got to play against, the top talent at the NBA Academy, they got to play against the kids at C's Academy, Amadou Gallo's initiative at Seed Academy. It was so much bigger than basketball. We got to go to the slave castles. We got to go to just travel around, go where Gorgie Dang built a hospital. We got to go see him and show him some love over there, and like just seeing the kids playing in extreme, extreme conditions. And it made the kids, I wish they were here to share, but I think it made them realize also we're playing in nice indoor gyms every game. These kids are playing on the concrete on 120-degree weather in the desert. Like, talk about perspective. So Africa does that every time you step on the continent, perspective. And now there's a platform where there's like stadiums being built, and, there's a real infrastructure being put in place. And to be a part of that, I'm really, really proud of that. And like all the team, everybody who's involved, and Richard Brown, who's making an unbelievable documentary about it, where people can really like learn about it and learn about what we're doing. yeah, it's a lot of exciting stuff. I couldn't be more proud of my African heritage and being able to also do something with a purpose and with some meaning.
Yeah. Well, it obviously speaks to your thoughtfulness. I'll also mention Barack Obama is involved with the documentary as well. And, it's interesting in watching the video. He's obviously one of the greatest orators and speakers ever. But, he's talking about, it's this existential question that we're always talking about. Jason, Tommy, me. It's like, why do sports matter? Why do sports matter? And, Barack spoke to that on the Sizzle. It'll be in the documentary. But I didn't even realize that there were countries in Africa that didn't have a single indoor basketball hoop. And the byproduct of building these arenas, of starting these leagues, of starting these franchises, investing in these franchises is, going back to something that we said with Derrick, it's like, it's hope, it's hope for people. And I think sports provide hope. They obviously provide literally jobs. So it's an amazing thing that you guys are doing. And look, based on that video, I'm like, I can't wait to see the doc. It's going to be sick, man.
Thanks, man.
Speaking of Mr. Obama, we heard a story about you going to his birthday party and playing. Can you tell the story? Playing pickup with him and maybe throwing elbows, maybe not, depending on who you ask.
I mean, I think he was talking a little bit of trash. I know it was his birthday, and so I think that...
Wait, Obama was talking trash specifically to you?
Yeah, he was talking trash to me. But it was first of all...
Like,
what is
Obama as a trash talker? Like,
so I'm checking my emails, and it's like, you've been invited to Obama's birthday party at the White House. It's like, you are allowed one guest. So my mom's in the kitchen making me a sandwich. And I'm like, Mom, come check this out. And just like, she was so hype. And she's like, oh, I'm coming. So I'm the only one who brings my mom. Everybody brings their wives and stuff. And I didn't even know what we were there to do. I didn't know who was going. I just know I'm invited. So we go, and it's just like, the next thing you know, it's like I'm in a van. It's like LeBron, like Kobe, thank God Derrick was there. I'm weirded out with all these guys all the time anyway, and it was awesome, man. Like we ended up competing. It was awesome, and I know the president was just like, I want you guys to compete and stuff. And he was. I just remember. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was talking a little trash to me, like And so I picked him up full court, and I was just kind of, give him a couple bumps along, just a couple bumps. I'm not trying to hurt the guy, but just letting him feel it. Like, this is a different animal.
Not a full manhandle, but just letting him know, like, dude, if I wanted to turn it on, like, this is what it's going to feel like.
I mean, just a little bit. I would, come on, let's not push it. My favorite moment of that whole thing was, so I'm sitting next to Kobe, and we're like, we have the next game, and LeBron gets a steal, and he's about to, he's on the break. So obviously, when LeBron catches the ball on the break, it's a sight to see. Everybody's like watching, like, okay, what is he gonna do? And I just remember Kobe turns around and starts talking to me like about something complete. Like he didn't even want to acknowledge the dunk. And I was like, okay, I know I'm sick, but this guy's sick as hell too. I was like, this guy won't even acknowledge. I was like, wow, that said a lot to me. That he wouldn't even acknowledge LeBron.
He didn't want that
fast break.
He didn't want that visual.
He didn't want the visual
in his memory.
He didn't want the visual of him watching LeBron dunk like this. He didn't want that picture of him looking. I was like, wow, there's levels to this.
Oh, that's a hell of a way to end this episode. This has been great, man. I feel like we uncovered a lot here.
Yeah,
we unpacked a lot. It was like part therapy for me. I feel like it was part therapy for you.
For real. I appreciate you guys, for real.
Yeah, no, this was awesome, man. We appreciate you. Welcome anytime, bud. All right.
Respect.